Myths as symbolic maps of divine order, social moral order, and Durkheim's social forces, Zeus, Heracles, Indra, with Kant's symbolic knowledge plus an inherent conflict of symbolism versus materialist rigid adherence to quantification plus Rollo May's historical overview. Symbols Introduction Balaganapathi Devarakonda provides an excellent introduction for symbols and symbolism. It was the exercise of the symbolic faculty that brought culture into existence, and it is the use of symbols that makes the perpetuation of culture possible. Without the symbol there would be no culture, and man would be merely an animal, not a human being. Our contact with the world outside is based on symbols. Our language is nothing but symbols. The scripts are still more so. Our art, our poetry, in fact, every aspect of life is based on symbols. We think in symbols, we act in symbols. We live in symbols, we learn in symbols. This view is also advanced by Leslie A. White as well as the famous anthropologist, Clifford Geertz. Heschel observes that flags are an excellent illustration for symbols, something Balaganapathi as well as D. Butts agree with. Both highlight the fact that national symbols can evoke powerful emotions. I apply that concept to symbols and symbolism of justice, which is historically proven by countless protests against injustice throughout history. The earliest historical protest, revolt, was in the city of Lagash in ancient Sumerian civilization. Urukagina overthrew the corrupt Ensi-Lugalanda around 2375 BCE. The point is that even a precursory overview of myths reveals concepts pf justice and order embedded in the myths. An inherent conflict, symbolism versus materialist physiology, laboratory focus. Rollo May, an American existential psychologist and author, observed that there has been a radical change during the past 3 decades. Neither term, symbol or myth, even appears in the index of the standard psychology textbooks. He goes on to say that this neglect and oversight was due to the proclivity, the materialist fixation, with data which could ultimately be described in physiological or stimulus response terms. Balaganapath emphasizes a symbol reduces the enormous complexity of communication by using a concrete sign as a kind of shorthand for a complex of interrelated concepts, ideas, and value systems. The meanings that these symbolic forms transmit are complex. Instead of standing for a single referent, they evoke a variety of meanings, some of which may be ambiguous. That makes symbols unsuitable for strict rational analysis and the rigid adherence of materialist methodology to quantification. The essence of symbols. Balaganapathi goes on to say that though man and his life ultimately are symbolic, there are more evident symbols in man's creation. These symbols are the substitutes or suggestions of abstract things. They are more concrete in nature. Thus, superimposing an idea on a thing or invoking a deity in an image is symbolization. Symbols are used for both concealment and revelation. They conceal partly the essential content from an ordinary person and partly reveal it by suggesting it. That is entirely consistent with Kant's theory of symbolic knowledge. Wikipedia states that Kant's Critique of Pure Reason has often been cited as the most significant volume of metaphysics and epistemology in modern philosophy. John Glenn stresses that Kant, 1724–1804, focused on symbols as basic concepts, the categories and the ideas of reason, which the human mind employs can only come to be conceived because they are capable of being first presented in concrete symbolic form. Invoking a deity in an image doesn't mean that the divine doesn't exist. What it means is that human beings understand and connect with the divine through symbols and symbolism. This is consistent with early Christian mystics and leaders such as Saint Gregory of Nyssa and Saint Augustine, who viewed God as beyond words and beyond comprehension. Kant also stated that God is not a suitable subject for scientific investigation or knowledge. Symbols energize emotions, national, religious, and spiritual symbolism. David Butts states national attachment, a feeling of close personal attachment to one's nation or state, is a powerful organizing force that has been a facet of all successful human societies. The powerful emotions and universality of patriotism are self-evident. In World War I, 11 million soldiers were killed and every single soldier was a patriot. The Battle of the Somme was one of the bloodiest in history, with over 1 million men killed or wounded. The 57,470 casualties suffered by the British in the first day of the battle, including 19,240 killed, were the worst in the history of the British Army. This wholesale slaughter of men first emerged during the American Civil War. Toward the end of the Civil War, in the Battle of Cold Harbor, Union soldiers pinned letters to their loved ones to their backs, knowing the order for a frontal attack would result in their deaths. It would take very powerful emotions to keep men committed in those horrific circumstances. Symbolism and identity, D. Balaganapathi observes, the basis of every culture and every identity is determined by its own established common symbolic expression. During the Vatican's crusade against the heretical sect the Cathars, the ancient city of Minerve in southern France was the site of a 10-week siege by Simon de Montfort in 1210. The citizens of Minerve, after surrendering, were given the option of converting to Catholicism or death. 140 Cathars chose death rather than convert, and were burned at the stake. What is unique is that those 140 Cathars who chose death died for a metaphor. The dualistic theology of the Cathars held that the physical world was a manifestation of evil by the demiurge Rex Mundi, king of the world, while God was entirely spiritual without any physical manifestation. So, symbolism can invoke powerful emotions and are intricately connected with motivations in some circumstances. Symbols and symbolism of justice and injustice. Historically, protests and revolts against injustice are frequent and innumerable. The earliest historical revolt was in the city of Lagash in ancient Sumerian civilization in the Fertile Crescent between the Tigris and Euphrates. Urukagina overthrew the Ensi-Lugalanda around 2375 BCE. Urukagina reforms against corrupt ruler Lugalanda improved the lives of common people by addressing issues like the seizure of their boats, sheep, and fish stores. On recent history, there have been numerous protests against injustice, including the Montgomery bus boycott, the Greensboro sit-in, the Freedom Rides, the Salt March by Gandhi, the Stonewall riots, the Black Lives Matter protests, and the student protests of the 1960s, 1963 March on Washington for Jobs and Freedom, 1969 Anti-1969 Vietnam War protest, 1969, 1982 Anti-Nuclear March. The People's Climate March, in 2014, this was one of the largest protests in U.S. history. These examples demonstrate the enduring struggle for fairness and equality in diverse societies and cultures. The inescapable conclusion would be that there is a built-in, hardwired value for justice and fairness in human consciousness, and the existence of unconscious symbols associated with the concepts of justice and equality. Symbols and Spirituality. The Synthesis Consensus of Viktor Frankl, Carl Jung, William James, and Emil Durkheim asserts that spirituality can create a sense of reality and also that unconscious spiritual symbols are emotionally energized. William James emphasized that they, spiritual experiences, determine our vital attitude as decisively as the vital attitude of lovers is determined by the habitual sense. Furthermore, Nancy Ferlotti states, affect emerges from archetypes, which are the a priori ordering principles of nature, the world, and the psyche. Donald Kolsched observes, archetypal energy is rooted deep in the unconscious and it is archaic, primitive, and also typical. Archetypal energies and effects are not easily assimilated by the conscious mind. Myths as symbolic maps of social consciousness. Mesopotamian, Zeus, Indra, Germanic. An overview of Mesopotamian gods reveals numerous examples of symbolic maps of social consciousness. Shamash, the solar deity and judge of gods and men, Shamash was known as the god of justice and equity. He was a member of the Anunnaki, a special class of Mesopotamian gods. Marduk, the Babylonian god of justice, compassion, healing, and magic. Marduk was also the patron god of Babylon and was sometimes considered the god of creation. Enki, the Babylonian god of wisdom and fresh waters, Enki was also the god of magic and the patron of craftsmen, artisans, and exorcists. Nabu, the god of wisdom and learning, Nabu was the scribe of Marduk and had the ability to make prophecies come true by writing them. Inanna, also known as Ishtar or Astarte, Inanna was the goddess of sex, war, and justice. She was also known as the Queen of Heaven and was believed to have the ability to change a person's gender. Enlil, a central deity in the Mesopotamian worldview, Enlil was both creator and destroyer, with unalterable authority and control over fate. Anu, the Mesopotamian god of the sky, Anu was also the king of gods. He was sometimes attributed with the creation of humans with the assistance of his sons Enlil and Enki. The Zeus myth as a symbolic map of social consciousness. Zeus, the father and ruler of heavens and earth, was replete with bountiful symbols and symbolism. The lightning bolts of Zeus symbolized raw power and control of nature. Zeus, of course, had a royal scepter and a throne which symbolized authority and social power. Befitting his role as king of the gods, Zeus was attended by a large complement of lesser divinities. His throne was guarded by 4 winged spirits, 2 male and 2 females, named Kratos, strength, Zelos, rivalry, Nike, victory, and Bia, force. These goddesses were collectively responsible for the orderly functioning of the cosmos. The founder of kingly power, of law and of order, whence Dice, Themis and Nemesis are his assistants. For the same reason he protects the assembly of the people, Agorios, the meetings of the council, Ruleos, and as he presides over the whole state, so also over every house and family. He also watched over the sanctity of the oath, Porcios, the law of hospitality, Zenios, and protected suppliants. He avenged those who were wronged, and punished those who had committed a crime, for he watched the doings and sufferings of all men. Furthermore, Zeus was the source of prophetic power, and everything good as well as bad comes from Zeus, and according to his own choice he assigns their good or evil lot to mortals, and fate itself was subordinate to him. The Indra myth as a symbolic map of social consciousness. The Hindu god, Indra, was the king of the gods, the god of war, the god of weather, the god of rain, thunder, and lightning, and as the upholder of cosmic order, Indra symbolized ultimate wisdom, intelligence, and exemplifies the characteristics of justice, integrity, and compassion, reflecting his role as a benevolent deity. At first, an oral tradition, the sacred scriptures, the Vedas, were put into writing beginning in 1500 BCE until 500 BCE. The Vedas are the oldest Hindu scriptures, traditionally rooted in Indo-Aryan culture. The Vedas are perhaps roughly parallel in timing to the Mycenaean society, which dates from 1750 BCE to 1050 BCE and employed linear B writing. The Hindu god Indra is parallel to the Greek god Zeus. Indra's primordial parents were Dyaus Pitta and earth goddess Prithvi. In fact, the Mycenaean linear B name for Zeus was Diwi/Diwo. The linguistic origins of the Hindu sky god Dyaus are rooted in the Proto-Indo-European deity Dias Ph2 which means daylight sky father, similar to other gods like Zeus Pater, Illyrian, Deipatros, and Jupiter. As the celestial ruler, Indra was ruler of the gods and Svarga, heaven, as well. Yet, Indra was the god of war, the god of weather, and the god of rain, thunder, and lightning in the Rigveda, which are remarkably similar to deities in other Indo-European cultures like Jupiter, Perun, Perkunus, Zalmoxis, Taranis, Zeus, and Thor. Indra is depicted as a mighty being force brandishing a thunderbolt, mounted on Airavata, a white elephant. As cosmic order, Indra symbolized ultimate wisdom, intelligence, and exemplified the characteristics of justice, integrity, and compassion as well as Dharma, which embodied righteousness and duty and made Indra the guardian of moral law. I would add that, from my research, compassion as a teaching didn't fully blossom in Hinduism until the Upanishads, a development roughly parallel to Judaism and Greek philosophy. In my ebook in Kindle edition Amazon KDP by Charles Peck Jr. you can read the full story, Myths as Symbolic Maps of Social Forces, Durkheim, Zeus, Heracles, Thor, Indra, Germanic with Kant's symbolic knowledge and Balaganapath, Life is based on symbols, 3 sections not in the video. 1. Norse mythology, A Different Social Consciousness. Carol Cusack, in her essay on Durkheim and ancient Germanic culture, observes, the relationship of the social classes and their particular gods is elaborated in Eddaic poem Rikstula, which tells how the god Heimdall became the progenitor of the three social classes. 2. Models of social consciousness, social forces and social moral order and myths. The forces before which the believer bows are not simple physical energies, such as are presented to the sense and the imagination, they are social forces. Emile Durkheim. Ramon Reyes highlights the unifying aspect of spirituality in prehistoric Philippine societies. In sum, social and moral order encompasses the living, the dead, the deities, and the spirits. The spiritual and religious beliefs created a social consciousness. Social perception consciousness is social order. 3. Death is a figment of your imagination, supernatural model as a swindle. William R. Miller and Carl E. Torreson state a philosophical basis for this perspective is materialism, the belief that there is nothing to study because spirituality is intangible and beyond the senses, which creates the illusion and fallacy that spirituality is unreal. Plus the supernatural fallacy. It is not true if the major premise is not true. Supreme Court Justice Rehnquist. That is a widespread maladaptive stereotype. If you consider the concept of death, which is intangible, then, following the materialist line of argument, that makes death a figment of your imagination, which is absurd, of course. The argument that all spirituality is unreal is equally absurd, on several levels. Besides the materialist argument being an illusion and fallacy, there are studies which demonstrate that several types of spirituality are tangible and real, such as Saslow's study that revealed a correlation between spirituality and compassion.